Alright guys, welcome to the final part of the Hail Caesar deck analysis. We're going to go over the lands today. It's going to be a pretty short one. Um, and then we're going to talk about what the future plans for Hail Caesar is as far as my deck collection goes. Am I going to scrap it? Am I going to keep it? Am I going to rebuild it? Or am I going to merge it with another pre-existing deck that I have? And then I'll do a couple of videos on whatever that selection is. But before we get into all of that, let's go ahead and do the analysis of the lands for the Hail Caesar deck. Alright, jumping right in, we're going to go ahead and start with the basic lands. There are 4 full art swamps, 5 full art plains, and 5 full art mountains. So less swamps than plains and mountains. That's kind of an interesting one to think about when we start with. So first off, we're going to go into here right after that. We're going to go into these ones. I really need to look up what the technical term for these lands are, because in my opinion, they really suck. I do not like these lands because they enter untapped and you can tap them for colorless, but they do not help you with your color balance at all. They are unreliable when it comes to color balance because you can only tap it for colored mana if you control a swamp. I kind of went over this with the Mothman deck, but these ones, if you don't have a swamp, they're good because you can play it down. You can still tap it for a colorless. But if you were to have a different land, almost any other land in this entire deck, instead, when you draw it, you would do a lot better because you'd be able to tap it for your colored mana if it was a land that actually taps for colored, regardless of what you already have on field. And now remember, I said there are 4 swamps in this entire deck. And so unless you draw a swamp, then you're not going to be able to tap these for colored, and they're really not going to do you a whole lot of good. My opinion, I would at least swap them out for basic lands. I could see swapping them out for non-basics, but if nothing else, even in my opinion, even basic lands would be better than these. Just so that you can help get that color spread, because you are running a tricolor deck. If you're running a 2-color deck, I could see these being not as much of an issue. In a 3-color deck, I would definitely go ahead and pull those out. So after those, we go into our cycling land. Canyon Slough enters the battlefield tapped. Taps for either a black or a red. Or you can pay 2 and discard it. 2 colorless and discard it to draw a card if you don't need that extra mana ramp. Next up, we have our typed slow lands. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a plains or a swamp. For isolated chapel, swamp or a mountain, Dragon Skull Summit, mountain or plains, cliff top retreat. So the reason why these are different than the ones that I was just talking about a second ago is because these are 2. So these ones aren't just, it's not just swamp, it's swamp or plains, which is much better. And not only that, that only determines whether or not it enters tapped, not whether or not you can tap it for the color. So they will help you with your color balance. If you don't have a color and you get one of these, that will help you out and possibly have a good chance of even entering untapped. So I love these lands so much better than the other ones that I don't know what they're called. Next up, we're going to look at the conversion lands. Pay 1 colorless and tap to add 2 of the designated colors. So in this deck, we've got 1 for black-white and 1 for black-red. None for red-white, which I found particularly interesting, but there it is. So I love these ones too. They're really good, again, especially in a tricolor deck for getting that mana spread that you need, making sure that you have all of the colors that you're going to need to be able to run the deck. So up next we have our actual slow lands, of which there's only one in this deck, is Smoldering Marsh. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Also very solid. Now we have the 3 temples. Temples of Malice, Silence, and Triumph, respectively. We got black-red, black-white, and red-white. When any of these enter the battlefield, you scry 1. They all enter tapped by default. I used to not really care for these ones too much because they do enter tapped by default. But again, that scry can be very helpful when you look at the top card of your library, especially in the early game. If you don't have land in your hand and you pull a non-land and you need that land, you can cycle it to the bottom of your library. Just helps you kind of get what you want, what you need, when you need. So I definitely would include these in. They add, again, to that color balance, which is one of the most important things about doing land analysis, is making sure that you get at least one of all of your colors, so you can be able to play most of your deck. Ideally, 2 of each of your colors, and then being able to build up your land beyond that. So now we get into the kind of the singles. We got Memorial to Glory is a white land that enters the battlefield tapped, and it has a secondary ability of pay white and 3 and tap, sacrifice it to create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. So basically pay 4, sacrifice this to create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. Can probably do better than that for that mana cost, but we've been seeing that a lot throughout this deck, where we've been seeing pay 4 and do a thing to create 2 tokens. So that's kind of seems to be a standard in this deck. I believe there are definitely cards out there that we can take that and reduce that and make that token generation more efficient. But in a land, it's not terrible. Here we go. We got Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds. Both of them do the same thing. They enter the battlefield untapped, and they have the ability tap, sacrifice this land, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. So these are, again, really helpful for sorting out that early game mana balance, making sure you get those colors. And even if you do get them late game, it's not a problem. It just allows you to be like, oh, I have a bunch of cards in my hand that need 2 black, and I don't have 2 black, and then I'm going to acquire those. So anyway, in 3-color decks, definitely recommend both of these. In 2-color decks, I would recommend at least one of them. But they're pretty common in decks that I run. I really find value in those. Next, we got Path of Ancestry. So remember, we were talking in the previous video, human creature, human creature, human creature, human creature, all of the human creatures. So this is kind of a tribal land that we can apply to humans or soldiers. Path of Ancestry enters the battlefield tapped. Tap it to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. When that mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, scry 1. So we kind of already went over scry. Look at the top card of your library. You can choose to put it back on the top or put it on the bottom. Now, our commander is a human soldier, so whenever we cast a human spell or a soldier spell using the mana produced by the Path of Ancestry, then we are going to be able to scry 1. Path of Ancestry is fantastic in tribal decks. It's also solid in non-tribal decks, but it really loses out on a lot of its efficiency because it does enter the battlefield tapped. So it's not really a pseudo command tower. So it really just depends if your deck does have, whether or not it's based on tribal or not. If it has some form of a tribal emphasis, I would consider putting in a Path of Ancestry, but otherwise I would just throw something else in there instead. Next up, we got Nomad Outpost. It taps for any color in our our Mardu color scheme. Enters the battlefield tapped by default. Pretty solid. Gives us again that color spread, the ability to use all three of our colors here. Next land up, we got Diamond City. Diamond City enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it. So if it would be dealt damage or destroyed, remove a shield counter from it instead. So that's good. So it's protected at least once from destroy target lands, or destroy all lands, or whatever the case is. It taps for colorless, or you can tap it to move a shield counter from Diamond City onto target creature. Activate only if 2 or more other creatures enter the battlefield under your control this turn. So if 2 more creatures enter the battlefield under your control, you can tap this. Instead of tapping it for mana, you can tap it down to move that shield counter from here onto another creature to give it that same level of protection. Pretty good. I feel like in a deck that if you could add more shield counters to this and be able to continuously reuse that, that would be much better. But this deck doesn't really do much with like proliferate or anything like that, so might consider pulling that one out, but we'll see how things end up going. Windbrisk Heights is a hideaway land. It's got hideaway 4, so when it enters the battlefield, you look at the top 4 cards, 4 because hideaway 4, of your library, and you exile one of those cards face down and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This land enters the battlefield tapped. It taps for a white, but you can also pay a single white mana and tap it to cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost if you attacked with 3 or more creatures this turn. So on a turn, if you attack with 3 or more creatures, you can pay 1 white and tap this to cast that card that was exiled with it when it enters the battlefield. So this can be pretty good for getting around some of your high mana value cards. Get a little bit of a pseudo free cast, just tapping 1 to be able to get that out there, whatever it is. So that can definitely be fairly useful. I enjoy the hideaway lands in decks that specialize in their activation, which this one does, because this one is triggered when you attack with 3 or more creatures. And you win this deck, we've already gone over, you're going to be attacking with all kinds of creatures. So we got 3 more, and then we're going to go into what my future plans for this deck are going to be, and what the next video I'm going to release is going to be on as a result of that. We got Myriad Landscape, enters the battlefield tapped, taps for colorless, but you can also pay 2 and tap. Sacrifice Myriad Landscape, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards that share a land type, and put them onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. Battlefield tapped. So basically this is like a more advanced version of Terramorphic Expanse or Evolving Wilds. It enters the battlefield tapped. It taps for a mana in and of itself, but it also, you can pay 2 and tap it, sacrifice it, boom, just like Evolving Wilds, within a little bit of an extra cost, but you're going to bring 2 land cards that share a basic land type from your graveyard to the battlefield. Very good for balancing your color and your 3 costs, or balancing balancing your color balance in a tricolor deck. There's my words. We got Ash Barrens. Taps for colorless or basic land cycling, so you can tap 1 colorless and discard this card to dive your library for a basic land card of your choice and put it into your hand. So that can be useful for, again, getting the colors that you need. And the last one is Command Tower. Enters untapped and taps for 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. So those are the lands, and with the culmination of all of these videos, that is the complete deck list for Caesar Legion's Emperor Precon, called Hail Caesar. So moving forward, I love this deck. This is a fantastic deck. With some upgrades, it could be made great. But I happened to also have another deck that I feel like if I were to take these two decks and I was to merge them, I would create something awesome. And so I'm going to end up taking Caesar Legion's Emperor apart, and I'm going to meld him into my pre-existing Isshin deck. A lot of the original Caesar cards, well, maybe not a lot, but a good number of the cards in this deck will end up finding their way into my new revamped Isshin deck, which is what I'm going to go over in the next couple of videos that I make, is going to be the deck lists for what those changes end up being, and how I turn Caesars into uh, melding it with my Isshin deck here. So I will catch you all next time for the first of those videos, and like and subscribe. Enjoy.